This is Robert Martinage, C21 Canada podcast series in conversation with Dr. Bonnie Schmidt, founder and president. Let's Talk Science, spotlight on science learning, snapshot of a decade this afternoon. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Schmidt.
Really, Bonnie, please. I'm thrilled to be here with you today, Robert.
Oh, thank you, Bonnie. A little bit about Bonnie Schmidt is the founder and president of Let's Talk Science, an award-winning national charitable organization that she began while completing her PhD in psychology at Western University. And they've served an estimated 10 million children, youth, and educators have been impacted by Let's Talk Science. It's in inception, and Bonnie Schmidt is also a member of the C21 board of advisors. Well, congratulations on the recent release of 2 reports, and talk to me about the inspiration. A decade, you're looking back, and are we making progress?
Oh, for sure. So first of all, I'm going to do a shameless plug. Here's
Sure,
a picture of the cover.
Props are always good.
Props are
I
always
love it.
welcome, right?
I can't wait to get my copy.
Available on a website, English and French. And we did this in partnership with Amgen Canada. So Let's Talk Science has been offering programming for almost 30 years, actually formally, but we've also been known for our work in advocacy and looking at data. How can we tell the story about why K-12 or actually early years to grade 12, science, tech, engineering, and math programming is really important for the future. In 2012, we did our first Spotlight on Science Learning report and wanted to put forward the story of benchmarks that should be measured in order for us to keep track of what was happening in the ecosystem. So it wasn't just about what we were doing, but writ large, what's actually happening. 2022 rolls around and we thought it's been a decade since we actually started the series. We've done a whole series of reports over the years looking at a variety of topics used and cited by all sorts of organizations, policy makers, policy documents and whatnot. But we thought with the 10 years and having are we out of COVID yet? I'm not sure, maybe coming out of COVID, the world has changed so much that we wanted to use the opportunity to look at what has changed, what hasn't changed, and what needs to change, to be thinking about the importance of science learning, STEM learning, and how we can be developing the citizens and scholars and workers of the future. So with this report, we just looked at publicly available data. So this is not primary research, but it was really taking a look at what was out there. Things have changed. In some areas, it's actually pretty exciting to see STEM itself doesn't need to be defined, right? In 2012, we had to write this long definition about what did STEM actually stand for. And now it's really become its own marketing brand. So public awareness.
And embedded in K-12 education pretty much across Canada.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So the brand is there. And we also did a poll with Environics to look at the percentage of adults that really felt STEM education was important for their young people. And it was over 95% agreed with that statement, right? So the public understanding and embracing of it has improved. STEM participation at post-secondary has also increased by over 10%. So that's been a big, big change. What we did find, though, is that a large part of that increase, so that 10% increase, quite a bit of it is accounted for by international students. So the domestic student participation has increased a little bit, but not nearly at the same level as international students to the post-secondary STEM programming.
Now, I understand that from a STEM perspective that women in STEM has been a big focus. How are we doing with encouraging women in STEM?
Yes, so I'm going to start off by saying it depends on how you define STEM. So typically when we talk about the women in STEM issue, we're really focused on physical sciences, technology, engineering, mathematics. And unfortunately, women in engineering kind of hit a peak and then started to come down. We're still leaning into gender disparities in that area.
Hmm.
But if you broaden it to talk about STEM, also including life sciences, environmental sciences, you see the opposite phenomenon. So there's more women than men, but we don't talk about those medical sciences, environmental sciences in the same way. So there's gender
Right.
disparities that really do need to be addressed on both sides of the equation, but different subsections of the STEM disciplines.
So some things have changed and some haven't. So we have work to do. Your job's not done yet.
No, I would actually say too that what hasn't changed that has been deeply disappointing to me has been the participation rates in the grade 12 peer science courses in grade 12. And
Right.
kids are saying they want to lean into multidisciplinary issues-based focused programs, but we're still largely teaching biology, chemistry, physics, and math.
Mm.
Participation rate is not, it's been pretty much stable over the last 10 years. And computer science, an area that we are saying is quite important for the future, has only got about 3% of young people graduating with a senior credit in computer science. So it's not even whether it's male or female, it's that we just don't have nearly enough
Mm.
kids thinking about that. So that hasn't changed. And that gatekeeper between high school and university, because we know that our culture really dictates high school teachers to teach to getting into post-secondary, largely skewing towards university when you're thinking about the
Right.
sciences, at least culturally, right? That's what we keep doing. So
Right.
the admissions aren't changing all that much at post-secondary, and that is not unlocking some of the change at high school that we are seeing some really creative teachers and really creative boards trying to do in the earlier grades. They come back to the traditional sciences in grade 12 in order to get kids into the system at the next stage. So there's something in that area that
Hmm.
could change, but it isn't changing. And it would be very interesting to think about what might happen, what might change maybe in the next 10 years as we go forward.
Well, and it's a process as far as acceptances to university and what that looks like. How do you assess students, going to the next level? There's been a lot of chatter about that, and what is the role of faculties of education in helping prepare teachers to have the competencies to teach effectively and encourage more participation in STEM. I like the notion of interdisciplinary because it
Mhm.
really is about problem solving and life skill, real world problems,
Mhm.
and climate action, speaking of which, is a good segue.
The other report we did. Yeah.
So, as a parent,
Yeah.
this is an area that's becoming more and more important to me because I'm thinking about legacy and my kids, and I want them to live in a world that is not depleted, that we can hopefully improve on, as opposed to continue to degrade.
Mhm. So we did a paper also available on our website called the Climate Action Lab. And it was really an exciting opportunity for us. We brought 85 high school students and 16 university coaches together from coast to coast to coast, very diverse team. And we had them in 12 teams who over the course of about 6 weeks or so did a variety of ethnographic research to try to understand what are the barriers and the opportunities for teen engagement in positive climate action. And what we found was reinforcing of some work we had done a few years ago, if you remember our Canada 2067 work, in which
Absolutely. I
we were
remember the
trying.
launch of that
Yeah, and well, that's
product.
also available on the website because it's all actually starting to come together in a really
Right.
nice story. But in Canada 2067, when we held high school student summits right across the country, they were really leaning in and advocating for multidisciplinary issues-based
Hmm.
programming that brought the sciences, the arts, the humanities, everything together to really think about issues-based concepts that they can actually get behind. And we saw that validated with the Climate Action Lab. So we heard from young people that multidisciplinary issues focused is super important for them. They also would like a little bit more uncoupling between the idea of eco-anxiety and positive action. We really had the sense that we're almost too much provoking anxiety when and talking about big abstract issues like
Right.
greenhouse gas emissions when we're trying to get teens to lean in, as opposed to talking about positive things that individuals and groups can make. They feel a bit abandoned by government, by industry. They're not seeing enough
Interesting.
progress happen. And because we regularly talk about big things like emissions, right? They're not really seeing how they and their individual actions can make a difference or how their voice will
Right.
actually be heard. So having young people at the table, recognizing that their voices are important, thinking more about issues-based multidisciplinary courses, opportunities for land-based learning actually came through pretty loud, and a
Wow.
strong interest in incorporating Indigenous ways of knowing from young people was really, really important. They still are leaning into their teachers. Their teachers are very important mentors and coaches for them and from their perspective. But
Absolutely.
they want educators who are really passionate and interested in the topic and can help provide them, with that opportunity to get actively engaged in positive action. So for us at Let's Talk Science, this kind of work is really starting to frame, it's validating some of the work that we have been doing when we've been incorporating teen attitudes towards our programming far more often now, and thinking about how do we take that next step to empower, embolden,
Right.
and help them realize that they're talented, passionate young people who really need to be heard.
And giving them agency and
Absolutely. Hmm.
challenge-based learning,
Hmm.
problem-based learning. What key trends do you see moving forward in education?
Well, I'm seeing a use of technology for sure, and but teachers may be wondering when to use the technology in meaningful ways. I think we're going to see some really creative applications of looking at maybe group-based learning through technology as opposed to it just being the transmission tool, right? Like when kids were sent home and they were participating as listeners or
Right.
viewers, you start to see some really interesting opportunities. What we've experienced is teachers who want more from the engagement, that through the beginning part of the pandemic it was like good enough, send us good enough, we need to deal with this, to educators who have become much more capable and well versed in using technology in really meaningful ways. And so that's made us up our game, right? It's no longer good enough to just deliver something quickly through technology. It's how do you actually have interactive programming that young people can engage with, that teachers can engage with, and really becomes the medium, not the end point, right? So it's definitely made us up our game. The other area, if we're looking at science and technology, it is actually getting away from language of the traditional pure sciences to be looking at One Health, to be looking at
Right.
sustainable development, to be looking at the circular economy, right? So these bigger trends that are happening in the forefront of science and technology, genomic sciences that actually brings things
Right.
together, is a very, very big and important movement. I wouldn't actually say it's a trend, but that's
Mhm.
how the science community
Interesting.
is integrating and looking at challenges of the future. And we really need to think differently and do better, I think, to make sure that young people are prepared for those challenge questions. Climate change, circular
Right.
economy, it's all really connected. We're not using that language in the
100%.
K-12 system. Yeah.
You know, one of our entrepreneurs in residence recently returned from India. He's Dr. Aman Iqbal, who is an Oxford PhD in pharma and had a startup at Mars, sold that. Now he's looking at longevity tech.
Hmm.
Longevity tech. And one of my other board members at Canaccord Capital is focused on health tech as a sector. So, which encompasses science in a big way. And so there's opportunities in terms of careers of the future. Let's perhaps touch on that because there's some pretty cool gigs,
Yeah.
including, astronaut Hatfield, who happens to be part of Team Canada soccer right now. I don't know how he got that gig, but, having an astronaut license opens some doors for you, doesn't it?
Well, I have to say our astronaut corps is multi-talented for sure. That
Yeah.
team is absolutely amazing. I think you touched on something that's really important, and it's understanding jobs of the future. And
Hmm.
it's not just about the traditional jobs. So some of the work that we have been doing has been really in response to young people needing to understand the breadth and diversity of opportunities that are
Hmm.
available and will be available, especially when who knows exactly where things are going to go, but health tech is definitely going to be a huge area. Sustainable energy
Hmm.
sources, big transition. How are we going to be
Hmm.
dealing with building and manufacturing, construction in entirely new ways? So not only will there be new types of fields emerging, but there's going to be a total rethink of fields that have been around for long
Hmm.
time and are not, they shouldn't be deemed as traditional. So
No.
young people are disengaging too early, in large part because they're not seeing the relevance today and they're not seeing
Right.
the pathway to a future. So yes, you're right. We'll be actually kicking off our 30th anniversary next year, next school year. But I think our work is more
That's
important now.
incredible.
I know. I
We just
started out at a
celebrated
good
10th
time.
anniversary at C21, and you're well
I
ahead of
know.
us, Bonnie. You started this in high school,
In
was it?
high school, elementary school, Robert. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, long, yeah.
Amazing. Well,
Thanks.
kudos to you for your
Thank you.
passion and making an impact. Talk to me about the importance of partnerships because you couldn't do it without some of the incredible partnerships. I'm writing a
Yeah.
book, The Art of Networking in the Digital Age, which is going to encompass partnerships. I think I should be consulting you to write that chapter.
Well, I would say collaborative spirit is one of our core values at Let's Talk Science. And
Amazing.
you're absolutely right that there's no way we're ever going to make the kind of system impact that we aspire to make if we don't have a very big sandbox and see ourselves as catalyzing engagement between the science, tech, engineering, math community and education. So we work with, for example, 55 universities and colleges to deliver our outreach program. We work with other organizations like Genome Canada, Stem Cell Network, ArcticNet, the Space Agency, the Royal Society of Canada, and I can go on and on and on to help with knowledge mobilization and translation. This is a culture issue. This isn't just about trying to get more students in grade 4 to lean into science. This is about how do we build a country? How do we have citizens who are there? How do we ensure that every one of our 6.5 million kids in this country have the opportunities they deserve? So working together, we actually can reach coast to coast to coast. English, French, and many other languages, support our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities, support historically marginalized audiences. It really needs an approach that is fully integrated and engages as many people as possible in this great challenge to build a better country.
Well said. Kudos to you for
Thanks.
your 30 years of impact and being agile and really, adapting when you had to. Innovation and
Mhm.
that growth mindset is, part of your DNA. No
And
pun intended.
listening, right? So we've
Yes.
responded over the years to
Yes.
help teachers when they've asked us and pointed out what they've needed. So massive gratitude to the educators and the school boards
Absolutely.
and the kids and parents in our community that really are directing us as to where we should be going next. Super helpful.
Well, Ken is lucky to have you,
Yeah.
and thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Bonnie.
Thanks, Robert.
That was Dr. Bonnie Schmidt, the founder and president of Let's Talk Science. My name is Robert Mardlachi, co-founder and CEO of C21 Canada, and this concludes our Canada Learning Series podcast, accelerating the changes that matter for K-12 learners in Canada. Be sure to check out c21canada.org for your latest news in innovation and education in Canada. And until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep the learning curve steep.